councils now are they have more powers, but they're more inclined, if you put it that way, to when they are asked to go and take a look at a property that's in the private rented sector, that they'll take it through a process where they may go and prosecute the landlord, and there's fines and all those sorts of things that goes along with that. And there's also, because of that, all the claims management companies growing in number daily as well. And what that's creating is a lot more fear in the markets that we're in. But the expectation is growing, and they're saying, look, guys, can I use the data that we create to then defend a claim, for instance? The highs are where you do get that customer that comes back and says, yeah, thanks, I didn't need to spend $3,000 on changing my wall. Actually, all I needed to do was just put a better fan in there, and you guys told me that. Great. That's perfect.
This is the Stronger Business Together podcast, where business owners learn from other business owners. No theory, no gurus, just real journeys and overcoming real hurdles. Today, I'm joined by Leonard Carey, who runs Dampsmart. Unlike every business owner, he's in that middle of building things, fixing things, and growing something that really matters. Leonard, welcome.
Thank you for having me on, and hi, Granger.
Fantastic. So let's do Act 1 now, your business. So in plain English, what does your business do?
So we have sensor technology and an analytics platform, and we use that to get a better picture of what's actually happening inside a home as regards the ventilation, the insulation, where the moisture is coming from, and also we then predict where damp and mold is going to be. And we use that to help social housing and private renting landlords to understand what they need to fix in the house, but also to create a healthier home for their tenants.
Wow, really is Dampsmart. Fantastic. Says on the tin.
Yeah.
So typically, you talked about the type of marketplace that you're helping. What are they dealing with? Why would a landlord go, maybe they can't see mold, so why would they typically come knocking on your door then?
I think it's go back a bit. That damp and mold in properties in Britain is a damp and wet place, and there's always been, particularly the last couple of decades, and in social housing, and most recently in the news, there's been unfortunately a lot of illness and a few deaths as well because of there being quite a lot of damp or mold in properties. But over the years, it's been really hard to fix. There's been lots of either paints that you paint over stuff. There's been lots of treatments that you can apply. There's a whole industry around surveyors going around and saying, no, it's that, it's rather than that. There's a whole bunch of ventilation specialists saying, no, if you have this, then it'll always go away. It'll never come back. But I think what's happened over the years is that landlords have kind of got a bit frustrated because they thought they could get rid of it. They thought they were on top of it. They thought that they could speak to an expert that would better solve it for good. But that hasn't happened right across the industry, whether it be in large housing associations or the smaller landlords with one or two properties. Right across the board, it's been a problem that's never gone away. And I think one of the reasons why people come to us is because we've taken it right back to the science. The science of why does a building do what it does? Not just about here's the temperature and humidity, but also about the actual fabric of the building, the walls, how the ventilation works, but also what's going on outside. And it's amazing that when you talk to people about if it's a cold, rainy day outside, could you open your windows and still get some benefit of ventilation? And the answer in most cases is yes. But if that person is by the coast, most of us know if you're by the coast on holiday, the place feels damp, and that's because outside is pretty damp as well. But there's a science to it. And what we've done is we've condensed all that science and created, if you like, a platform and an analysis that gives people the answers. And it's important for us that people actually have the answer, not just the surveyor or the landlord, but also the tenant as well. Because to actually solve the problem, you need everybody to understand what the problem is to then be able to know what their part is to solving it.
Wow. So right the way back to basic science and understanding everything that's going on. Yeah, so that's what they're dealing with. They're trying to resolve this issue. So what is the product? How does it work?
Well, if I go back a long way, actually, about 6 years ago, back then, small little sensors, I don't have one with me here, but small little sensors didn't really exist in the UK or anywhere really. And what we thought about this as a problem of not just technology, but also about perception and about how do you preserve people's dignity, I suppose, because nobody likes to be monitored. Nobody likes to feel as if they're having sensors in their home. They've got no idea what they're doing, and they're being spied on. So right at the very beginning, we started on a road of saying, let's make our own tiny little sensors that you can hardly see, but you knew they were there, but they weren't in the way, and they weren't they weren't obtrusive. But equally, in that design, we wanted to make sure that anybody could put them in themselves. So you had a say in it. You had how do you call it now? People consented to have them rather than being imposed on, having it imposed on them, that actually they wanted to have it in their homes. So with all of that, over the years, we've been building the technology so that's really simple to put in. You don't need any wiring, don't need any expertise. They're really small as well. And so what it means is that we can put a sensor in every single room, including hallways, attics, loft spaces, basements. We can get a complete view of how the home performs and how moisture moves around, how heat moves around, how the outside weather affects what's going on inside. And with that, we can then start to look at, well, actually, at the moment, there's a risk in that corner over there. And in the future, if you keep doing this, this is what it's going to look like. So technology is all about make it super simple. Let's hide all the really difficult science. Let's make it really easy for people to just take a sensor and put it somewhere and then sit back and off you go. And that you're not tripping over wires. You're not having to worry about connecting to Wi-Fi, none of that stuff. It's all about, I can just do it myself. And that was the main design principle around it.
Wow, fantastic. And actually, they say, making something simple is the hardest thing to do. So yeah. And it's one of the principles of the Stronger Business Together. When I work with my clients, we look at simplifying and making simple things. And you've actually made a simple product by doing exactly that. Fantastic. So tell us about the business. When did it start? What was that original spark?
So the original spark must have been about 8 years ago. I was working in the telecoms industry. I was working in the innovation space and having to fly across Europe and sometimes into the States and talk to large organizations about what we can do around innovation with mobile networks. And this is before, do you remember on your phone right now, you can make payments on your phone. But inside your phone, and you can use it for tickets as well, to go on the London Underground, on buses and so on. All that is NFC. There's near field communications. So I was working on a team with one telecoms company who we first introduced that into the UK way back.
Yeah.
And I even still have one of the phones that we got Ericsson to make. And I think the phone cost something like £80,000, sorry, just as one prototype. So for me, the spark has always been about how do you take that really quite difficult science and difficult electronics and difficult maths and make it so that anybody can use it. And that's always been that journey. How I started with the business, though, was the same sort of thing, but it was more visceral than that. It's more about hearing from people that they're living in houses and going to people's houses where there's mold everywhere, it's damp, kids are coughing all the time. I've got asthma and it's not so great at the best of times. And I really thought, I know some science. I know some great people who know some science. They're PhDs and professors. Why isn't any of this stuff, any of the science of buildings, why isn't any of it in the hands of people who really need it? And that was my spark, is to say, well, let's make it. Now, it sounds easy, because actually the journey is really, really hard to do that. But but it always remains that way is how do you work? How do you make something that anybody can use and get some value out of? But it's using science. And they don't even know they're using science. They don't even know. I had this one great one where we're working with the a council, sorry, and they are an enforcement inspection team, and they go around enforcing changes on landlords. But they're a really great team. They don't do any enforcement really. They do more softer suggestions using our technology and so on and so forth. But one of them, she said that she's not very good at maths at all. She doesn't really understand maths. But now with what we've done, she gets it. She gets that if this happens, then I need to do that. And it was a revelation. She keeps on talking to other people about it and just wanting to evangelize that I now know if this is happening outside, I need to do this inside. Wow, that's just perfect. That's exactly what you want from people, from your service.
Brilliant. Wow, I really like that. And that's a great example and thought what your technology can do for people to help them. So what does business look like today in terms of size and shape?
Yes, so we've got 3 of us still, and this is the bit that talk about a bit later about we do some really great science stuff, really great helping people to get to the truth of what's going on in their property. But now it's about scaling. So with 3 of us, we've got a platform. People love the platform, and the technology is fantastic. But it's now about managing the level of demand, and with 3 people, it's not that easy. And so we're having to scale.
And leads are really important because leads generate sales. How do you generate leads today then?
So it's partnerships. We're working with 2 good partners at the moment. One, they've got their own software solution. They're not a competitor, but we're complementing one another. And they've got a really good set of clients. Also working with a good organization that represents about 100,000 private landlords. And so they're helping us to get in front of those via webinars and talking about the things that we're doing. And of course, then generating leads from that and contacting those people. What we're finding a lot is word of mouth. I'm still surprised that we get an inquiry on the website that says, I heard about you guys, word of mouth. Can you help me? Often we do get the most difficult cases. And that's one thing I want to change is that I don't always want to be dealing with the most difficult cases that nobody else has been able to solve before, because that's a challenge scaling that, because it's the difficult ones. You have to apply some significant mathematics and processing to actually get right. And that's not scalable.
And for the business then, what are you sort of aiming for the next 12 months and why?
So next 12 months is all about revenue and the amount of properties that we're in, but also for the end of the year, we want to be able to go to more of a SaaS and subscription model. At the moment, it's more of I would say a little bit of moving into that, but it's still a bit more consulting. But we want to be able to get into that self-serve software as a service. We've done everything that we possibly can around making it that the devices are easy to put in, and you can do it yourself. You can post it. The platform's there, but now it's about solidifying that and making it the service that you just go on and just use it, and there's a recurring revenue from it.
Wow, exciting next steps. Brilliant. Let's move on to Act 2 now, your journey and what you've learned. So, when you're building a business and you've been doing that for the last 8 years, there are highs and lows. What are some of those highs? What are some of those lows? And what did you learn from them?
Yeah, I think the highs, I always like to think revenue is great, but there's always that thing about when you wake up in the morning, are you really enthusiastic about what you're still doing? Are you still doing good? Yeah. And that has always been what I wanted to do, is demonstrate, not to myself, but everybody as well, that we've got results, not just the monetary results, but actually people who are in a better position than they were before. And those are the highs. The highs are where you do get that customer that comes back and says, yeah, thanks. I didn't need to spend $3,000 on changing my wall. Actually, all I needed to do was just put a better fan in there. And you guys told me that. It's great. That's perfect. I think there's more and more, some of the lows, but the highs are kind of transition into that. Some of the highs, which have also been a bit of a double-edged sword, is when you do discover that some people need a lot more help than they admit to. So when we did a project with one of the big councils, we were discovering people who were vulnerable. They weren't on any vulnerability lists. They were living in properties that were damp and cold. But when we spoke to them, their stoicism was so great. They just didn't really want to say that I need help. But when you framed it in a slightly different way, they said, yeah, okay, I do need some help. So it's a bit of a strange one, that, because it was a high because you thought, right, I've actually helped somebody who wasn't helping, who didn't believe that they deserved help. But equally, on the downside, it's like, God, there must be thousands of others like this as well. How big is this problem? Yeah. I think some of the downsides to building the business has been the amount of times we've had to pivot a bit. Because I think the industry in itself, they've had to quickly change as well. And we've had to do the same. When we first started, we were doing 3D models of, point clouds that you can spin around on your iPad, and you can predict that in the corner, there's going to be a problem in that corner. And people say, oh my God, how do you know that? Well, all the algorithms will tell us that. They can give it to their 5-year-old and they can spin it around and they really engage with it. We made a mistake then, that we thought that the industry wanted that level of understanding. And we didn't understand that actually the industry had I know this is going to go out, but it's difficult to say any other way. I think the industry was struggling with their own understanding of how buildings performed, and what they really wanted was just a paper report that just said, there you go. I think what's down.
A lot of people, they're not experts. We live in our world of expertise, but actually the people that we're helping, they're not the experts. They just want to do this, do that, and take my trouble away, So yeah, definitely. And it was really interesting the way you talked about the pivot and change. So I mean, one of the things that we do as business owners, we have to try and manage our resources, manage what we're doing, things, make things simpler in the business. And we talk about making your business simpler. So is there anything that you've done within the business then that has made it simpler for you to bring energy back to you and the team?
Yeah. So working with partners has been really important, because we found ourselves trying to answer every question. And you can't. So things like, we would get clients that say, "Oh, can you come around and take a look yourself?" No, we can't do that. We're doing software and sensor technology. So working with a partner who does go around and looks at things, but you do go as for a business of thinking, oh, should we go in that direction? Should we build a team of people that are going around in vans? Well, no, let's not do that. And equally, some of the output that we're producing now, we've pared that back a bit. We've looked again at how do we simplify the offer. So it is that piece of paper that says, here's the 7, can't get my fingers right, the 7 things that you need to do, off you go, all the way through to, oh, and by the way, here's some predictions, and here's what we've done with 29 million homes, and here's where you sit within them. It's trying to really understand, what is it that your customer right now is feeling, what pain are they feeling, and what is that magic pill they want, deliver it. Once it's there, once they've got it, then think about the other things.
Yeah. And when we get busy, we have to make decisions. Things have to happen. We have limited resources. Where do things still go wrong when you're all under pressure within the business today?
Oh, wow. The raw mail is one. Again, double-edged sword. Because the kit, you can put it in the post and you can deliver it. You just got one large client who wants, it's got hundreds of homes. They want to do a big project and showcase to their big boss. we put the kit in the Royal Mail's special delivery, deliver next day by 1:00. That was on Monday. It's now, what is it, Thursday. So, and they still haven't got it. So so there's some things still go wrong, and small things like that. You think, well, it doesn't have an impact. Kind of does, because it's a perception. Although it's not your fault, it's still a perception. It still has a knock-on effect on the meetings that we're going to have, and hopefully sign a deal and all that sort of good stuff. So it's just a very small thing. To anybody who's technical out there, we just made a slight change to the platform. We just changed the password so it makes it longer and more robust. Didn't realize that actually we just released some other software that needed that link to be permanent. It just crashed it. And we're frantically running around the place. So again, it's one of those things of small things, small team, make a small change, could make a big impact.
Yeah. Yes, I can feel that pain. I've worked with software teams, but with big teams and big changes, and they go wrong. Just need to speak to some of the banks how they've made mistakes.
Well,
So how do you keep the business focusing on the right things to do next? How do you keep the business healthy when it gets really busy?
I think it's always reminding yourself about because one thing that is kind of infectious, I suppose, is when it gets busy and you're reveling in the idea of, oh, wow, we're busy, we're moving forward, it's great, and then somebody will talk to you about an idea of, I don't know, tracking animals in the forest or something. It could be anything. It could be just off the cuff. It could be anything that is related to the technology that we've got, but they then start dragging you towards something which is not what you're there to do. And I think that's one of the challenges of knowing that technically you can do a lot of things. And it's a technical person's dream to want to apply what they do to lots of different things as well. But the discipline of saying, no, tell me how this is going to work for the business. If you can't answer that question, it's not there.
Yes. No, very, very true. Keeping focus, using the power of no, parking ideas for the future. Maybe when we've got 100 employees and thousands of activities. It is really, as a small business, the ability to say no is one of the most important skills that you need. So so very true. So very true. So let's move on to Act 3 now. Our hurdle round. So what have you picked as our hurdle for us to talk about today?
Well, it's a kind of two hurdles, really. And they are related. One is the hurdle in the market that we're in, or the market that we're in, and the knock-on effect that creates for us as a hurdle. And it's really about scale. How do you scale up? And I'll give you, I'll illustrate that a bit more. Right now, the housing industry, whether it be social housing or private rented, there's new laws coming out, and there's AWAB's law for social housing. I think that's been out for a while, but as of the 1st of May, there's now renters' rights coming out as well, and there's a whole bunch of new legislation that gives tenants more rights around the rental property they're in. But it affects so many people. For instance, the councils now, but they're more inclined, if put it that way, to when they are asked to go and take a look at a property that's in the private rented sector, that they'll take it through a process where they may go and prosecute the landlord, and there's fines and all those sorts of things that goes along with that. And there's also, because of that, all the claims management companies, they're growing in number daily as well. And what's that's creating is a lot more fear in the markets that we're in.
Yeah.
But the expectation is growing, and they're saying, look, guys, can I use the data that we create to then defend a claim, for instance? That's then creating a bit of a headache of, well, actually, I better speak to the lawyer about that, and then you've got the problem of, I think I may have said it earlier about, I just need the kits now, but I've got an issue, a complaint I need to deal with straight away. and then you're trying to get stuff out to people just in time.
Yeah.
So you've got this rising, not just the demand, but also the expectation and the worry that's going up and up and up. And then that cascades through to us that says, right, I need it tomorrow. I need it right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do you scale?
So we're thinking about scaling in a marketplace that probably needs your type of technology, but maybe doesn't fully understand it and that it exists. And we're sort of about, how do we, the business grow to satisfy what they should know that they need. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So let's just cast our heads forwards. If we were to fix this big problem going forwards, but if we go forward 6 months, what would better, not perfect, what would better look like for you in a sentence in 6 months' time?
Wow. Okay. So specific, there's always the revenue, and as a team, you'd love to be able to have double the size of the team. That's
okay.
What, have another developer, have someone who's absolutely dedicated to marketing and looking after the clients that we do have, and also then getting more as well. Getting the logistics right as well, and finding a logistic partner who can actually deliver the next day. That'll be really, really good. But I think going back to the other hurdle of the marketplace and trying to get the marketplace to be educated a little bit as well. We're already starting on that journey of saying, here's a free tool, and we're going to be doing some social media stuff as well, where we're hoping to get people to say, oh, right, I didn't realize that was, if you did that, that's what happened.
Yeah. Okay. So let's, I was just going to pause there. So the problem with problems is problems can be really big. I was trained by some Japanese back in the 90s. That's how old I was. And my master engineer would always say to me, Granger-san, you cannot eat the pizza in one go. We need to break it down into smaller slices. Okay. So let's pick one of those. Is it revenue growth? Or is it awareness, or is it logistics? Which one are we going to try and fix through this conversation that would be better in 6 months' time?
I think revenue growth comes from awareness.
Okay, yep.
Because I think, and those two are linked. The logistics stuff we can deal with, and that's okay.
Okay. So let's talk about awareness and getting the awareness of your product and how it helps your clients, etc., out there. Okay, so starting condition, today, what's going on? What do you do today?
So there's a number of things around awareness. One is webinars, blogs, LinkedIn, direct mail, word of mouth, all these things. But I think the problem is a bit bigger, and this is why we've taken a route of, how can we actually go out to the mass market and say, by the way, do you realize that by the relationship between temperature and humidity inside and temperature and humidity outside is this? And if that happens, if you use these little sliders, almost like a game, almost like gamifying it, almost starting to get people aware that they know that there is a problem. And after that, we're there to solve it.
Absolutely. So the top of any marketing funnel is people that don't even know they've got the problem. The next stage below that is people that are problem aware, but they're not even looking for a solution. Then below that is people that are problem aware and looking for a solution. And then the final bottom of the funnel are people that are problem aware. They understand they need a solution. They know what solutions look like, and they're looking to you to fix that because they know you. Okay. So the difficulty we have, if we must think about then also, so that's the marketing funnel, but actually think about the law of diffusion, of a new product. It starts off with those early adopters, then it goes to the early minority, then it goes to the late minority, and then we then have to cross the chasm. And I feel maybe at the moment, have you got those early adopters, those evangelists, those people that are shouting out, they love your product, they love what you do. Have you got those real people that you can get your case studies from? They're shouting, they're telling everybody.
We do.
Because those are the most important people to motivate for you to then talk to the next level of people. So keeping them involved with the evolution of the product, keeping them involved with what you're doing, keeping them excited about what's coming next or what your marketing planning is next, getting them meeting them on a inverted commas regular basis. Okay, I don't know what that means, but keeping them so evangelized that they're talking to more people, because you need that first set of people to evangelize your product and make that happen. That's what the law of diffusion talks about. The next step is they help you to introduce you to the early minority. So those people that will start to, they are problem aware, they know they have a problem, but they don't know that the product and the systems are out there. So it's then picking those type of people and thinking how your marketing approach, rather than mass market at the moment. The reason you can't go to mass market is you haven't crossed the chasm yet, which is a great book, talks about technology and how to spread technology. And it's very clear that if you don't do those first two stages, you'll never get to the point of enough people talking about you to cross that chasm. If you're in that early minority and you've got those evangelists, what are you doing to try and get more people on the bandwagon that have a problem and need some sort of solution?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but we are, for instance, with the councils, we know that getting into councils across the UK is hard. So we've got two that we're working with very closely, and we meet them every week and we go through their cases and we start building up that relationship and making sure that we're embedded into the things that they do. And one of them has got a very strong link to the London Mayor's office, and then they have this meeting with all the other London boroughs. I think it's that you've got to remind ourselves not to be impatient, because you think that I've got this really good relationship. They love what we're doing. They're talking to other people. Why isn't everybody knocking on our door?
Yes,
because,
but what I often say is, how are you helping them to talk about you? What I mean by that is, what materials do you give them? What website links? What training do you give them? What extra bonuses and excitement to doing, so you're always on the top of their mind when they go into other meetings? Are you meeting them and finding out when they're going to the next meeting and sending them a little reminder beforehand? I'm just thinking of ideas off the top of my head here, but it's keeping them evangelized so they then start spreading the word and giving them things that they can go, oh look, have you seen this, or have you seen this, have you seen this? They can either hand it over physically to help them do it, because you've got to find those next set of people which will help to unlock then the growth that will take place.
You are right. And we are doing that, but not maybe as in a regimented way that we need to. I think we need to do that more. I think in terms of, working with one housing association and their surveyors, and we talk to them every week, and we give them new tools to use and show their tenants, show their other surveyor friends and within the RICS community as well, and just keeping that moving. But
what you get back from that is gold dust, okay? Because that is effectively what you're doing is you're testing your marketing strategies. And we often think that marketing is about that mass media and putting it out there. It's not. It's the hard grunt work that you do with those first amazing set of clients to test what works, getting them to help you find other people and testing what that works, by people saying, well, I know this organization. Fantastic. Okay. Who do you know in the organization? We'll contact them. If you can just do us a quick introduction, we'll do all the hard work, but just do that brief introduction. And now you're testing how you do that first introduction. How do you approach people? So you're testing, you're building that knowledge and that skill base, ready for that early majority of now on board. That you've got more people, you've doubled your revenue, and then you're saying, okay, now how do we get to the early majority? We've got to cross that chasm, but you've got all that experience then of doing that, rather than trying to jump it straight away. And that's, when you read the book, it takes you through those structures and that thinking, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think when you look back at what we are doing, in a way, even with, we're working with some letting agents at the moment. We're working very closely with 2 or 3 of them to get that sense of, do you love it? Yes. Has it made your business better? Yes, it has. Great. Talk to other people. And that's why sometimes we then get the word of mouth coming back. But the next,
And the webinar, I mean, it could still be the webinar, but rather than using the webinar in a mass market, what you're testing is you're testing the webinar on those next set of people because they've had that brief introduction. Yeah, they're lower down in the funnel, they're aware of it. There's a system out there called the perfect webinar, and the structure of it helps you to build up that need to the point of where you then make that sell, etc. in it. So the webinar is a great tool. But maybe what you're trying to do is you're trying to use it in the wrong marketplace at this moment of time because people aren't actually aware of the problem. They're actually looking for a solution. But when someone says, we've worked with these guys, we've worked with Dampsmart, and this is what we did, can I do a quick introduction? They then let you know, you phone them up, you talk to them and say, well, we've got this fantastic webinar coming up next week. Why not come on the webinar? Because we teach you all about damp and we give you all the tricks and the trays of understanding dampness in the house from our experience. It's only 10 minutes long, I don't know how long your webinar is, but you can do it. And then at the end, then you say, look, you can do this all yourselves, but actually, if you use our product, we can do this X, Y, and Z. So you're building that knowledge of how to get the webinar to work with people that are interested before you then try to sort of mass market it.
Yeah, I think going mass market is not going to be what we can do right now. I think going back to some earlier points we were making around scaling up just to that small segment that has suddenly become the expectation levels have gone up pretty high.
Yeah.
I think they're motivated and they're eager. And, we've got to be able to make sure that they are working with us and evangelizing to a wider market. And that's great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we all get lost in marketing because we see marketing from the point of view of McDonald's. Okay.
Yeah.
It's mass market, it's fantastic, or Nike or whatever. We go, that's what our marketing should be. But actually we forget that McDonald's once was a very, very small organization and they had to grow. What was the journey they went on? And that's what, these structures of crossing the chasm type thing for technology companies takes you through the journey. So what we have to do is just learn from those really great experiences and understand the journey and apply the journey and then put on our magic dust, which is the way that we want to do it because of the technology and the way that, our story helps and delivers. And that's really what we have to do as businesses, as small businesses, to fight our way up that curve. So, okay, brilliant. So what sort of one or two experiments would you do in the next week to try and start to see something around this?
I think, because right now we've got leads, we've got 500 leads, 500 names. And in that group, some we've recently contacted or been in contact with through the webinar that we had a couple of weeks ago. And they're pretty warm, if you like. But rather than going to, there's about 200 of those, rather than going to all 200, what we want to be able to do is go to some that we know are linked to others that we've done some work with.
Brilliant.
To then say, look, this is what the sort of things that we've been doing. Speak to these guys. They're in your region. Let's chat. I think what we're picking up more and more is that particularly landlords are very risk averse. They've made a capital investment. They've seen lots and lots of solutions out there. They really are listening to their peers. And really that's what we need to tap into a lot more. So we're not going to go for a mass, let's go for all 200 people. It's going to be more about, let's pick some that may be in the same area as this one that we're working with in Southend, for instance. And so go and talk to them, see what we're doing with those guys.
Yes.
I think that would be good.
Yeah. And the key always is helping them to understand the pain that they're in, because a lot of people probably don't understand that they're in pain. That's that top end of the funnel. People don't know the pain and they don't know that there's a solution out there. The next level is then they sort of know the pain because they've read some stuff, they've seen some stuff, their friend has told them about it, but they don't actually know that they need a solution. Yeah. So you've got to find those people at the lower end of the funnel initially, because as you move up the funnel, it becomes more expensive to convince those people. So you've got to find the people at the bottom end of the funnel. They've got the pain, they understand the product exists, and they know that you exist. And they've made that connection because they've connected to someone else that you have already delighted and love what the solution is that you can do for them. And if you can make those two connect, you'll have a much greater chance then of, that sales opportunity.
I'm really glad we've had this conversation. I know this is supposed to be, for another purpose, but I think it's good listening to what you have to say, because often, and I don't think we've touched on it, but often as a, business owner or just a small startup, sometimes your mind is in other places and you just need someone just to remind you of the basics, not just the basics, but this is a couple of steps you can do and ask that question. What are you going to do next week?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to spread that greater knowledge. I work with 24 clients at a time. That's it. But the podcast is to help share, give you that brief moment of time just to pause and to think and reflect. That's why we have this hurdle. So,
Yeah.
Leonard, thank you so much. That was fantastic. There's some really good stuff in here. So let's move on to our wrap up and close, because you wouldn't believe how long we've been recording for. So what did you hear yourself say today that maybe surprised you?
I think it was just this last piece of the conversation, which is more about what we're going to do next week. I think sometimes you can really get bogged down in what are you going to do by the end of the year? What's the big target? What's the big milestone? What's the big revenue number, connections, whatever it is. But the question of what you do next week, that's really important. And to actually have an answer or have somebody who can steer you around that. Of course, you do need to have that bigger picture. And I think through this conversation, I think it's structured really well, actually, to talk about what you've been, what's it been like, where you're heading. Oh, and by the way, so if you want to go over there, what's your first step? And I think that bit for me, that sticks in my mind from this, because as always, you can be strategizing forever.
Yeah. Taking action is the most important thing. But, I think Tony Robbins could take the tools about taking huge action or giant action. I can't remember the exact words, but just taking action is what we need to do. But Leonard, finally, how can people find out more about you and follow your journey more?
Well, we're on LinkedIn. Dampsmart, our website is smart.co, not .com, but dampsmart.co. If you're a landlord and you're a member of tenancy deposit scheme, we're supplying a whole bunch of blogs to them every couple of weeks, every month, I think now. So if you go on to their website, you probably see some content that I've written. Certainly come to the website, take a look around. Hopefully we've got the answers to the questions that you have, and hopefully we can help.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being so open and honest. I know our listeners will get a great lot from this conversation. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. We're on a mission to make business owners stronger together. If this conversation's helped you, please like, comment and follow on whatever platform you're using. About 60% of our audience hasn't done that yet, and these small actions help us reach more business owners just like you. If you want to join in the conversation as a guest, or if you have a hurdle question for us to discuss on a future episode, do reach out to us at info@strongerbusinesstogether.com. Now, go make this next week really successful, and we'll see you next time. Cheers!